Hey everybody, it's James Vaguely here. Welcome to another episode of the NBA podcast. And it's episode 185. Sounds like a big number. It feels like a big number. No, it doesn't, Ash. These episodes are the most fun part of my week and month. So how you doing today?
Yeah, the feeling's mutual. Love our podcasts. Yeah, going great, James. Looking forward to today.
Likewise, so am I. Episode 185. So listeners, today we're talking about a concept we call the energy map. And I mean, think about it. Like, you're in business. We're all in business. If we don't bring energy, well, you're not going to get anything done, right? Like, if you don't understand how to get the most out of yourself, you're not going to get the most out of your business. I know that's something you say a lot, Ash, around you can't, outperform yourself. What's the quote? I always get it wrong.
Oh, you can't outperform your mindset.
Or the one about yeah, your business can't outperform how you're performing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, your business can't outperform your level of performance. It's so true. And energy is such an important part of that.
It is. Yeah, so listeners, in this one, we wanted to share this concept of the energy map. We taught this actually a couple of times now to our members, and we'd love to share it with you guys too. So essentially, the best way of describing it without the visuals, because Ash, we normally do this one with visuals. So for our listeners, we'll do our best to do it without the visual. Let's see how we go. And considering I usually think in visuals, we'll see. The way we like to explain the energy map is that essentially the way most people show up, and listeners, this might be how you show up too, is that we show up during work hours, right? We've grown up, we've gone to school. Everything, pretty much school and work, it all revolves around set work hours. What is it, 9 o'clock till 3 o'clock roughly for school? And then when you get to work, it's 9 till 5, 8 till 6. We're very used to showing up at a certain time and being there until a particular time, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. And so it becomes very difficult to break out of this routine. And the fact is, your energy does not really work in a strict 9 to 5 sense. Do you have any stats, Ash, in terms of how many productive hours, putting you on the spot, the average person is likely to have in a 8 or 9 hour workday?
Yeah, there's quite a lot of data and science and research around this, and there's a little bit of variation. But let's take a normal 8-hour day, and if you're working in what I would call a normal sort of semi-bureaucratic office environment, it's somewhere around 2-3 hours of actual concentrated productive time spread across 8 hours is fairly normal. So when you think about that towards our own use of time, be really helpful to understand when your best 2 or 3 hours are, right?
Yeah, it does. And I think what most people try and do is they sit there from 9 to 5 and just get things done. Like, we've got that huge list, we've got all those files, we've got all those things to do, and we just start charging and trying to tick things off. Go, go, go. Have coffee at your desk, have lunch at your desk, taking calls, just getting as much stuff done as possible. And it doesn't really work, does it, Ash? Like, just sitting down and go, go, go is not a really good solution. So what we often do, and what we start to teach, and what a lot of people learn in time management courses is, we should block sections of our day. Let's have meetings in this section, admin in that section, loan processing or research work here, partner work here, etc. We try and compartmentalize our day, chopping it up between 9 and 5, Monday to Friday. That's kind of okay, but it's not really serving you at an energy level. So before we get into that, Ash, maybe comment on the traditional time management of just blocking things within the 9 to 5 workday without taking into account the energy situation.
Well, I could never make it work. I don't know about all of our listeners, James, but like everybody, I came from a sort of a corporate, fairly standard background where everything was measured, and you had to be busy the whole time. There was a lot of guilt, shame, and I guess watching you move around in an office. So it became this learned behavior to always look as though you're busy. irrespective of your level of energy and focus at any given time. So I guess for me, and I think maybe for a lot of our listeners, that's one of the reasons that we jump out of that traditional workplace and into the self-employed workplace where we can work in a more harmonious cycle with our energy. I mean, there's circadian patterns and rhythms that you need to understand about yourself. And I think time blocking doesn't really teach you that. I think we all really sense when we're higher focus and higher energy and when we're flat and down. And I think whilst there's times you've got to punch through that through necessity, I think if you're able to manage your time, it's far better to map your time or your important decision making and work around your peak energy rather than force yourself into a time block because some theoretical policy from elsewhere says that it's a good idea. I don't know anybody that has made time blocking work as a consistent way of improving productivity. It has its role, I think, in understanding a little bit about how you use your time, but being more effective with it, not necessarily.
Yeah, I could never make time blocking work, but that's I don't like to look at a full diary, but that's another kettle of fish entirely. But this, you're so right in that time blocking is not a bad thing, but without overlaying it with your energy, you're kind of, what's the point of having focus time? We call it sprints. With our members, we'll talk about having sprint sessions where you're working on the business and in that focus zone. It's no good having that for some people, for example, Ash, you have lunch, you come back and you've got that post-lunch slump. Why would you have an important focus session scheduled after lunch? So I don't mind the idea of time blocking too, but I think what we want to do is start to shift those blocks around based on energy. And I guess listeners, the way we want to do that is, well, we pay attention to our energy. It's pretty straightforward. Like you almost keep an energy diary. Ash mentioned before, talked about the circadian rhythm. Well, that happens throughout the day. And we have peaks and troughs where we'll feel more up, a bit flat. And everybody's a little bit different. I think the cycles are about the same sort of length, but it's different depending on different people. So some people are great first in the morning, others are great at night. You might be amazing mid-morning. You need to understand where your peaks and troughs are. So I'd be essentially getting a spreadsheet or a whiteboard and recording when I feel focused and full of energy and when I feel a little bit flat, and start to have those peaks and troughs. And then what I'd look to do is, over the course of, say, a week of tracking this, if I understand my peak energy points are at, let's just call it 2 or 3 times a day, that's where I would put the really focus, working on my business, creative, getting things done work. And then where the troughs are, and I know I'm going to be flat, it's after lunch, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's Monday morning, for example. That's where I'm going to put in admin, basic follow-up work, stuff that I know I don't have to be on a high, an energy high and creative to get done. So that's how I'd be doing it. Have you played with this before, Ash? How do you do it?
I have. And look, you mentioned something there that I think is interesting, and circadian rhythms or understanding your own energy and mental focus, which is ultimately what we're talking about, which is, having that clarity of focus, which is a result of energy. So for me, it's daily and weekly, right? You mentioned, what's a better day of the week? Some people are better on a Monday than they are on a Friday, and there's probably social and life and family that feeds into that. But purely on a 24-hour cycle, which is we human beings evolved, the sun comes up to wake us up and the sun goes down to put us to bed. That's essentially what our circadian rhythms are built around. And there's all these other distractions, light, phones, technology, busyness. I found out, I guess, over a period of time that for me, I have a peak in the morning. I'm flat during the middle of the day, late morning to early afternoon, have a peak again late afternoon, flat for a few hours. And then I generally had a peak between 12 and midnight. If I could stay awake that long, I came back to life. So for me, I ended up, you probably know this, I've mentioned this before. I ended up developing a cycle, a rhythm for me that had no file or loan work during the day. I found that during the day, I was much better focusing on relationships where I could do that with slightly less focus and more relaxed energy into relationships. And at night or first thing in the morning, I would allocate time to work on analyzing, problem solving files, writing them up for submission and getting them submitted, because I found my mental acuity was much stronger for those couple of hours. So for me, that's how I ended up operating for many years, relatively relaxed during the day, but hyper focused early in the morning and late at night. And that worked for me many years. Would it work for other people? Possibly not, but that's what I figured out for myself.
Yeah, I think it's really important to figure it out. There's no we can't give it to you, listeners. Like, this is something you have to figure out yourself. Number one, figure out when you feel good, when you don't feel as good, ups, downs, days of the week, chart it, measure it, and then play with it, because everyone's going to have different tasks that they do better when they're in energy and when they're not in energy. Like, as you said, Ash, for you, talking to people, building relationships, you could do that when you're a bit flat. Whereas for some people, they might need to be in peak energy to be doing that. So it's kind of understanding yourself as well. The key to this episode is really just, we want to try and get more done with less. We don't want people just sitting there between 9 and 5 because that's what everyone said you need to do. We've gone, you have your own business, you're a mortgage broker, you can design your day however you like, and you may as well design your day to not, so many people sit there at 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon, barely getting anything done, torturing themselves, chained to the desk, trying to push through that, energy slump barrier. It's like, no, have that as your go for a walk or go to the gym time. Like, don't sit there trying, thinking you have to abide by the regular set of rules set out by schools and general workplaces, because you don't.
It's so powerful. I love that. And self-torture. I mean, how many of you guys out there listening right now, you go, the bell rings, ding, 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 ding. Yes, you do feel like you're torturing yourself at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You're mentally absolutely fatigued, but you feel this pressing obligation to be trying to do things. But you haven't got the energy or the mental focus. You're much better to step away, have a nana nap. Like, James, maybe I should confess, I'm in my late 50s now, and since the age of about 21, I have had a nana nap or a power nap or a cat nap, call it what you like, in the middle of the day. Like, I learned early on that when I've had food in the middle of the day, I need to close my eyes for about half an hour.
Yeah.
And that's, nearly 40 years ago. So, and I never quite understood it back then, listeners, right? It was just something I just conked out. I just thought, there's probably something wrong with me. I'm 21 and I'm having a sleep in the middle of the day. Am I an old man before my age? People might argue that's true. I'm not sure. But, to this day, I have found that brings me back energized. Some people, you tell them to have a nap in the middle of the day, they go into total body shutdown. They can't get themselves going again, right? But for me, that power nap in the middle of the day powered me up for the next 2 or 3 hours.
That's interesting. When you said that, I was like, that's me. As in, if I nap during the day, that's me done. Like, it would take me, a 20-minute nap would take me probably 2 hours to get back to, conscious activity. Like, I can't do it. Even if I had 4 hours sleep one night because I was up early for a flight or something, I would still not nap. Like, it's just not in my thing. So it's so interesting how everybody's different. And, listeners, you'll be different. So I guess the challenge is, like, do this. Like, look at your calendar like a blank slate. And as we said, most people have probably only got a few hours of productive work a day in them. So identify where your peaks are and do the stuff that is the priority for you. The stuff that brings in the money and builds the business in those times. And then all the other times, well, either walk away and don't work at all, or do some of the more benign tasks if you still have to do those in your business. It's a relatively simple complex. It's a simple Idea,
Idea. Yes, it is, James.
concept. Yeah.
Look, I honestly, what you said is the key. Is listen to your body. Really is the key. And I think without going too far with that statement, but it is important to listen to your body. That's what we're talking about. And I think sometimes we just push away what our body's telling us is, I need a break, right? And I think just do this for a week or two to understand when you're up and down. Like walk away, come back. And I agree with you, James. And, as I said, the data might vary a little, but it's reasonably consistent in the sense that most people cumulatively really only have 2, 3, or 4 hours of really productive focus during a work day. The rest of the time is at a much lower level of focus. So if you understand when you've got those 2, 3, 4 hours, even if they're broken up into blocks, understanding when they are for you is a really powerful piece of self-awareness.
It is. And I guess, for those that heard what you said before, Ash, is a bit of a summary, I guess, is to think outside the 9 to 5 box. Like as you said before, don't just do this between work hours. Like if you're in an amazing, clear mental state at 10 o'clock at night, well, maybe you should plan an hour. Doesn't have to be every day, maybe a few times a week, where that this is going to be your time and you're going to get a sprint session or you're going to get something done during that time. That's the challenge, I guess, for everybody, is to not think in 9 to 5. If you want to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and be productive, great. If it's 10 o'clock at night, great. If it's 2 in the afternoon, great. So experiment, play around, move the building blocks around, and, push yourself outside of that normal, I have to sit here 9 to 5, and instead do what works for you.
And if nothing else works, listeners, you can adopt the Spanish approach of the afternoon siesta. In those countries, Greece, Spain, and other European countries, they finish the day at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They have 4 or 5 hours, siesta, call it, sleep, meal, relaxation, then go back to work in the evening. So it's not unusual, to map your day around your energy and concentration. It's quite common. I think just here in our culture, it's not common, because we're brought up to believe you need to be busy the whole time, even if you're not productive, which is what we're trying to get that message to. Busyness doesn't mean productive. We need to break that nexus.
I love that. That's a good place to finish. I think busyness does not mean productive. And this whole month, everybody, we're talking about productivity hacks. So this is one productivity hack. It's one you might not have heard before. So we hope that you've enjoyed this episode, and we hope that you try it and give it a go. Experiment with yourself and see how it goes. And over the next few weeks, we'll be talking and digging deeper into more productivity hacks. So I know this is a bit of your specialty, Ash, so I'm looking forward to the next few weeks.
Yeah, likewise, James. Good place to start today. I will see you next week.
Sounds like a plan. Listeners, have a good one, and we'll see you next time.